Cornelius Agrippa on the dignification of the magician, the exaltation of the magician, so that we are empowered to call down spiritual forces to effect change. Today we are continuing, without further ado, our studies of Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. This is the great classic from the 16th century, the bedrock of Renaissance magic. So we're getting into the classics today. We're pulling knowledge from Cornelius Agrippa in the 16th century. This book was written around 1509, 1510, passed around in manuscript form up until Book 1 was published in 1531, and all 3 books together in 1533. So, today we're finally delving into Book 3, the Intelligible Realm. And we're looking at what dignification is required, that one may be a true magician and a worker of miracles. So we're going to get into that today. I'm very excited to get into this. Again, Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy are divided into Book 1, deals with natural magic, dealing with things like stones and plants, material things that we touch to affect magic. Book 2 deals with astrological magic, a la Picatrix, pulling down astrological forces to capture astrological forces into a talisman to affect change. And now we get to Book 3, divine magic, working with the powers that are beyond the stars, beyond the cosmos. Now, this idea is actually very important, which would be carried forward in modern magic. This idea that through initiation, through spiritual exaltation, that the magician gains access to power by being in an elevated spiritual state. We see this in the grimoire tradition, where we have periods of fasting. We see this in the grimoire tradition, where we have periods of fasting, recitation of psalms, practicing good deeds, things like that in the classical magical material. And we also see this idea that someone that is spiritually exalted, in a spiritually elevated state, has more authority, more power to effect change in such things as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the writings of Eliphas Levi. So modern magic is really no different. It's very similar. It may use a little bit of a different language, but part of the backbone of the idea of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is that through initiation, through the magician being exalted spiritually, they gain power. Eliphas Levi goes a lot into this, about the exalted holy man, holy woman magician that has a special kind of divine power. So, I just wanted to point out that these ideas are not just classical magic, they're found in modern magic as well. These ideas echo through the centuries, and today we're getting to the source. First of all, there are 2 prerequisites to successful magic in Agrippa. 2 prerequisites. One is faith. You have to believe in your workings. This is not just modern magic. This is not New Age. And I'm not disparaging, by the way, when I use terms like New Age. I'm not dismissing these practices. I'm just pointing out that with modern, sometimes it's kind of watered down. It is, but it kind of glosses over. We're going to the classics here. And according to Agrippa, you have to have faith. You have to believe in your workings. This is fundamental. As a matter of fact, I mean, I could point in the 3 books of occult philosophy where it talks about the importance of faith. It is very important. The second prerequisite to successful magic in Agrippa is silence. Not talking about your workings. So we understand that there are 2 prerequisites to successful magic in Agrippa, and these are faith and silence. I just want to quote a little bit about the nature of silence. Faith is important. But if you go back to the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 3, chapter 2, it makes it very clear that silence is important. So let me just, I'm just going to read the very last paragraph of chapter 2, where he talks about the importance of silence. And I'm using the James Freak translation because it's in the public domain, so as to not infringe upon, anyone's rights or their publications. I'm going with James Freak. This is the very last paragraph where he talks about the importance of silence. Furthermore, I would also warn you in this beginning that even as the divine powers detest public things and profane and love secrecy, so every magical experiment fleeth the public, seeks to be hid. Every magical experiment fleeth the public, seeks to be hid, is strengthened by silence, but is destroyed by publication. Neither doth any complete effect follow after. All these things suffer loss. When they are poured into prating and incredulous minds, people that don't believe. Don't go talking about your workings with people that don't believe, especially non-believers. Therefore it behoveth a magical part operator, if he would get fruit from this art, to be secret, and to manifest to none, neither his work, nor place, nor time, neither his desire, nor will, unless either to a master, a partner, a magic partner, or a companion, who also ought to be faithful, believing, silent, and dignified by nature and education. Seeing that even prating, what is prating? Overly talking, talking about your workings, because seeing that even the prating of a companion, his incredulity, his lack of belief, and unworthiness hindereth and disturbeth the effect of every operation. Now, this is not to say that if we don't observe silence that it won't work. What Agrippa is saying is all of these things help. You may be able to still get effects as you talk about your workings. You may still get your effects not being a dignified, exalted spiritually, but all of these things help to get a better effect. Okay? So, this actually follows the 4 laws of the Magus, a la Eliphas Levi, to know, dare, will, and keep silent in modern magic. Anyways, so we're going to take a look at the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 3, chapter 3, what dignification is required, that one may be a true magician and a worker of miracles. We're going to get into this. Before I read, it's really not that much. Before I read, I just want to point out the essence of what he's going to say is that the more we get in touch with the divine within ourselves, the more we get in touch with that part of us that is beyond matter, that is beyond the external, the more we become angelical, the more we become divine, the more we get plugged into that part of us that is eternal, the part of us that is super celestial, the more we're able to affect super celestial divine magic. So we have to kind of, to use a modern phraseology, like we have to kind of resonate at that frequency to more easily pull down divine power. Otherwise, we're left with, you can still do magic with astrological timing and talismans and things like that. But if you're trying to pull down the power from the intelligible realm, like with Shem angels, it's better to be yourself connected with that divine spark within yourself. To be plugged in to the divine helps you to manifest. So I'm going to go ahead and read here. Agrippa says, about the beginning of the first book of this work, we've spoken what manner a person, a magician, ought to be. Now, he's talking about Book 1, Chapter 2, where it says that the magician should be learned in natural, astrological, and intelligible realms, that we should have a knowledge of these things, that is a requisite. But now we will declare a mystical and secret manner. We're going to go a little deeper. Necessary for everyone who desireth to practice this art, which is both the beginning, perfection, and key of all magical operations, and is the dignifying of men or women to this so sublime virtue and power. The word virtue here comes from the Latin virtus, which means power, strength. This so sublime virtue and power, for this faculty requireth in man a wonderful dignification, for that the understanding, the part of the soul that is beyond the body, where he talks about the higher understanding, he's talking about the soul or the spirit that's beyond our earthly frame, that part of us that is plugged into the intelligible realm, that is there even right now. So that understanding, for this faculty requireth in man a wonderful dignification, for that the understanding which is in us, the highest faculty of the soul, meaning the part of us that is touching upon the divine, is the only worker of wonders. When it is overwhelmed by too much commerce with the flesh and busied about the sensible soul of the body, is not worthy of the command of divine substances. Therefore, many prosecute this art in vain. Referring to someone that's trying to plug into this intelligible realm. If you aren't yourself spiritually elevated, and this idea is found in Proclus. It's found in the pagan Greek philosophers of late antiquity. It's found in Proclus, Iamblichus. This is actually an ancient idea found in different pagan cultures as well. That by too much commerce with the body, meaning that we are dominated by the passions. This is, in modern magic, the secret of the pentagram. Upright, the pentagram shows spirit dominating over matter and thus in command of it. Also, in modern magic, the chariot card, directing the horses, not the horses directing the charioteer. Therefore, it is meet that we who endeavor to attain to so great a height should especially meditate on two things. First, how we should leave carnal affections. Affections are emotions, feelings. How we should leave carnal affections, frail sense, and material passions. Now, Agrippa is not being world denying. He's not saying don't eat food or have sex. What he's saying is that the more that we live in the world of the spirit, the more we're able to access its powers. Not being covered over with the dross of matter, not being covered over in that sense. So it's a very hermetic idea. It's a very Platonic, hermetic idea, and also, of course, Kabbalistic. So first, how we should leave carnal affections, frail sins, and material passions. Secondly, by what way and means we may ascend to an intellect pure and conjoined with the powers of the gods. What is Agrippa saying here? That we connect to an intellect that is pure and conjoined with the powers of the gods. He's referring to the intellect not as reason. He's talking about getting access, being in contact with that part of us, part of the soul, the spirit, whatever term you want to use, that is eternal, that is timeless, that you have to be plugged into that part of you that is beyond these things. And of course, you see this idea of spiritual dignification in such things as the Abramelin, the periods of purification before certain ceremonies, etc. Therefore, okay, so natural dignity, this gets a little interesting. Natural dignity, he talks about natural dignity. That has to do with our natal charts. It's not required, but Agrippa talks about a natural dignity that may be in your natal chart, you're meant for magic. Now, he does go into, it's not required, you don't have to have anything special in your chart, but he talks about that certain forces are in your ninth house. The ninth house has to do with higher learning, philosophy, the ninth house of your natal chart. This is what he calls a natural dignification that comes from the dispensation of the heavens at your birth. This is talking about the natal chart. So natural dignity is the best disposition of the body and its organs, not obscuring the soul with any grossness, and being without all distemper. And this proceedeth, and it talks about like the quiet of the magician, the spiritual mage. This is an idea of a spiritual mage, lofty, someone that is, like a Platonist or a Hermetist, someone that, it's kind of the teaching of Hermetism and Platonism and, of course, Kabbalah and things like that as well. Natural dignity is the best disposition of the body and its organs, not obscuring the soul with any grossness, and being without all distemper. And this proceedeth from the situation, motion, light, and influence of the celestial bodies and spirits, which are conversant in the generation of every one. Fancy way of saying your birth chart. As are those whose ninth house is fortunate by Saturn, Sol, and Mercury. Mars also in the ninth house commandeth the spirits. Interesting. So this could be interpreted in a couple of ways. Is there actually the astrological planets? Is there the Sun, Mercury, Saturn, or Mars in the ninth house? Also the Lord, the ruler of the sign in the ninth house. So for example, having Mars in the ninth house could just simply be having Scorpio or Aries in the ninth house. Scorpio or Aries. The Sun is Leo in your ninth house. Is Leo in the ninth house. Mercury is Virgo or Gemini in your ninth house. Of Saturn. Why Saturn? We think of Saturn as restricting and inhibiting us, but Saturn also governs philosophy, higher knowledge. It is the planet of philosophy and higher knowledge. So is Capricorn or is Aquarius in your ninth house. Interesting, because those planets are said to be in sympathy with making a magician. So, as are those whose ninth house is fortunate by Saturn, Sol, and Mercury. Mars also in the ninth house commandeth the spirits. But concerning these things we have largely treated in the book on the stars. That's book 2. But whoso is not such a one? Here he says, what if you don't have that? What if you don't have anything special in your chart? This is what he says. But whoso is not such a one, it is necessary that he recompense the defect of nature by education. So if you don't have anything special in your chart that makes you a magician, You can do so by education. Education being both learning and practice. You can practice your way into magic, he says. So, by education and the best ordering and prosperous use of natural things until he or she becomes complete in all intrinsical and extrinsical perfections. Hence, so great care is taken in the law of Moses concerning the priest. Here he's just talking about the Levitical, like the things that Levites and Kohanim, ritual purity laws, which, you don't have to look at it from that type of perspective. You can just see it as avoiding any kind of ritual impurity according to this. But this is what Agrippa says. Hence, so great care is taken in the law of Moses concerning the priest or Levite, that he be not polluted by a dead carcass. So touching a dead body in Leviticus is considered a ritual impurity, or by a woman, a widow, or menstruous, that he be free from leprosy, flux of blood, burstiness, and be perfect in all his members, not blind, not lame, nor crook-backed, or with an ill-favored nose. You gotta love Agrippa, it's interesting. All right, it was written in the 1500s, y'all. So, and Apuleius saith in his Apology that the youth to be initiated to divination by magic spells ought to be chosen sound, without sickness, ingenious, comely, perfect in his members, of a quick spirit, eloquent in speech, that in him the divine power might be conversant, as in the good houses, that the mind of the youth, having quickly attained experience, may be restored to its divinity. That's just a long way of saying having a good vessel. It's best to be a magician if you're smart enough to learn the stuff. You have a good memory. You have, self-control. He's just saying that ideally you need to have a good vessel. You know what I mean? So Agrippa says, but the meritorious dignity is perfected by two things, learning and practice. So Agrippa says, even without all of this stuff, by careful study and practice, we could overcome, even if it's not in our birth charts, even if we have a crooked back or an imperfect vessel or whatever else, that through learning and practice, we can overcome any kind of defects. Now, when reading Agrippa, we need to avoid any kind of dogmatism. Just because Agrippa says something doesn't make it true. But I do think that there is wisdom in Cornelius Agrippa. There are things for us as modern magicians to reflect upon, and hence these videos. So, but the meritorious dignity is perfected by two things, namely learning and practice. So you can perfect yourself just through learning and practice also. The end of learning is to know the truth. It is meet, therefore, as is spoken in the beginning of the first book, that he be learned and skillful in those three faculties. Of course, Agrippa is talking about Book 1, Chapter 2, where he says that it's important to understand natural magic, celestial, divine magic, to understand these three realms, that we're skillful in these three faculties. We also need to understand that the universe and us, as above, so below, we have a material part of us, natural magic. We have a part of us that deals with personality and emotions, astrological realm, second realm, and then finally we have that divine part of us, the intelligible realm. So these three worlds of Agrippa exist within mankind as a microcosm. We have body, we have imagination and intellect and emotions, celestial realm. Beyond that, we have the intelligible, we have that divine spark at our core. So being in touch with these things helps us to get in touch with these things out there in the universe. So by being in touch with these levels within ourselves, we're able to access those things without us. So, continuing here. So then all impediments being removed, wholly to apply his soul to contemplation and to convert itself into itself. In other words, to turn inward. If we turn inward, close off the senses and turn inward, we could get to that core of our being, which gives us magical power, according to Cornelius Agrippa. So that's what he means here, wholly to apply his or her soul to contemplation and to convert itself into itself. In other words, to turn inwards, to shut out the senses and turn inwards. As Corpus Hermeticum 1, the Pymander says, when being removed from the sense, there was this vision of the great Pymander. So turning inwards, to apply his or her soul to contemplation and to convert itself into itself, to turn inward. For there is even in our own selves the apprehension and power of all things, but we are prohibited, so that we little enjoy these things by passions opposing us even from our birth, vain imaginations, and immodest affections, which being expelled, getting rid of impurities, impediments, self-control, strength. Of course, Eliphas Levi talks about this and his gaining power over the astral light, which Agrippa sounds a lot like the great magical agent of Cornelius Agrippa as well, as he talks about in Book 1, Chapter 1, the force that is beyond all things, the prima mater, the spiritus mundi, the spiritus mundi. So, but the religious operation obtains no less effect, which oftentimes of itself alone is sufficiently powerful for us to obtain this deifying virtue. So great is this virtue of holy duties, rightly exhibited and performed, that even they be not understood, yet piously and perfectly observed, and with a firm faith believed, that they have no less efficacy to adorn us with the divine power. Even if we don't understand, even if we lack all this deeper knowledge. So Agrippa's giving us many chances here. Is it in your birth chart? No? Okay, study and practice. You should have a deep understanding. Then again, he says, even if you don't have an understanding, if you just have a firm faith and conviction, it still can be powerful. So Agrippa here is not saying that you have to have these things to do magic, but you need to have these things to amp up the power, especially working with the intelligible realm. But what dignity is acquired by the art of religion, and in modern times, or even in Agrippa's day, he talks much about paganism. He talks about, of course, he was in the Renaissance when people were getting into, Aphrodite and Venus and Botticelli's, all this stuff. So where he says religion, he's really just saying being plugged into these higher spiritual forces and also the ceremonies of higher spiritual things. By what dignity is acquired by the art of religion is perfected by certain religious ceremonies, expiations, consecrations, and holy rites proceeding from him, whose spirit the public religion hath consecrated, who hath power. Here he's talking about the priesthood. He was writing in the 1500s. I do think that there is a power in the priesthood. The ordination is said to make a mark upon the soul, that if you're able to do transubstantiation, if you're able to make the sacraments, you're going to have more power in magic. And of initiating with sacramental power, by which So I'm going to read this footnote here where it says sacramental power. Sacramental power, magical initiation, is specific and concrete. Designed to accomplish some change, it is best exemplified in the Tibetan Angkor. The main idea that we attach to initiation is the revelation of a secret doctrine, admission to the knowledge of certain mysteries, whereas the Angkor is, above all, the transmission of a power, a force, by a kind of psychic process. The object in view is to communicate to the initiate the capacity to perform some particular act or to practice certain exercises which tend to develop various physical and intellectual faculties. Again, this is an idea that you see in the Golden Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. You see it in Eliphas Levi. You see it in modern Lodge magic, this idea of through meditation, Kundalini awakening, if you're like in the AA, Kundalini, through basically spiritual elevation, we have more access to power, says Agrippa. Hey, good morning, Gypsy. You found me live. You found me live. She always says that. Did I catch you live this time, Taliesin? Yes, you did. Okay. By which the character of the divine virtue and power is stamped on us, when they call the divine consent, by which man, supported with the divine nature, and made, as it were, a companion of the angels, beareth the engrafted power of God, and by this right is referred to the ecclesiastical mysteries. There's one paragraph left I want to read, just one paragraph left. I know that with the old Middle English, it could be a little wordy, and people are like, oh, what am I listening to? We got one paragraph left. Y'all made it, y'all. Gypsy says 2 days in a row. Yep, 2 days in a row. You made it. That's awesome. Well, you manifested it, Gypsy. Okay, so by which the character of the divine okay, wait, last paragraph. If therefore now thou shalt be a man or woman, perfect in the sacred understanding of religion, and piously and most constantly meditatest on it, and without doubting believest. It's very important to have belief, to have faith in your workings. Without doubting believest, and art such a one on whom the authority of holy rites and nature hath confirmed dignity above others, and one whom the divine power contemn not, thou shalt be able, by praying, consecrating, sacrificing, invocating, to attract spiritual and celestial powers, and to imprint them on those things thou pleasest. To imprint them. In modern magic just draws from Agrippa. That's why I talk about modern magic so much. Agrippa is the wellspring. You see it in the magician card, pulling power from above, channeling it below. Whether you're pulling power from an astrological force in the cosmos and channeling it into an astrological talisman, the talisman being the body, you're imbuing it with soul, you're imbuing it with life so that the talisman becomes a living thing. The body of the talisman is the flesh, it is the matter. You're pulling down spiritual forces to imbue it with spiritual power, or whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to call down from above, channel it below, using Kabbalah to look at it as you're in Malkut, you're poking a hole in the cosmos. I like this analogy, to allow a rush of energy into our world from the infinite realm. The more that we are in touch with the part of us that is infinite, the more power we have. I'm going to put this into a very simple, I'm going to read the comment, but hold on, let me finish my thought here. I'm going to put this into a very simple thing when it comes to like psychic things, right? There is a part of us, let us say, that is beyond time. That all time happens now at a certain level, right? That being in touch with the part of us that is beyond time, we may gain access to information about the future, about the past. The part of us, when we're plugged into that part of us that is beyond time and space, the divine nature of things, we're more able to call down. Now, I have a comment, which is a very important one, but I just want to finish my paragraph real quick. So, what does it say? And so to vivify every magical work, but whosoever beyond the authority of his office, without the merit of sanctity and learning, beyond the dignity of nature and education, shall presume to work anything in magic, shall work in vain, and deceive both himself and those that believe on him in the power incurred with the displeasure of the divine powers. In other words, without knowledge and practice, and ideally spiritual elevation, you can come into problems with magic. Probably, if life is a mess, probably not good to bring in magical forces. If you're able to basically, if your life is in order, it's probably easier, safer to call down spiritual forces. If someone's life is already in disorder, I hate to say it, you start calling on occult forces, things can get even more disordered. You're stirring the pot. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? If life is already in disarray, it's probably not a great time to pull in a little extra electricity into life. There is more that I wanted to read, but I love Agrippa, but I don't want to just overwhelm my video. And I want to encourage people, half of my videos go on Patreon. I want to encourage people, if you'd like, check out my Patreon. It's a subscription. Have my videos go there. I really appreciate my Patreon supporters. So, yep, I'm going to go and delete this and re-upload. Please give me a thumbs up. People that watch my videos, please consider supporting my Patreon or giving me a super thanks. And I will see y'all in the next video. All right. Thank you so much. See you in the next video, y'all.